She works with medical patients who want to include cannabis therapeutics in their health management program. She offers patient consulting via phone, Skype, or house call, as well as dispensary staff training and professional education for medical professionals wishing to further their knowledge. She's a medical cannabis patient and manages her neurological movement disorder using a high CBD, low THC protocol. You can find her online at dearnursesusan.com. Please welcome Susan Marks.
Thank you for inviting me. So I am also a medical cannabis patient. I have a progressive neurological movement disorder called essential tremor. Is anybody familiar with essential tremor? So if you think of Katharine Hepburn, with her head shaking and the voice tremoring and the hands, so that's what I have. It runs in my family. Usually the way that they manage essential tremor is using anti-seizure medications. And I was on anti-seizure medications, and as the disorder progresses, they have to keep increasing the anti-seizure medication until it gets to toxic levels, and then they put you over on another one, and the same process goes on. My older brother, who is 10 years older than I am, went through every anti-seizure medication, and he just recently had deep brain stimulation, which is similar to a pacemaker, only for the brain. So they put wires into the brain, and it's controlled with basically a pacemaker. So it can be a very disabling condition. And so as my tremor was getting worse and worse, I got desperate. So I just started researching for some alternatives and came across cannabis. And as I read more and more of the medical research, I was stunned, to say the least. Number one, that I didn't know any of this. I was never a cannabis user, so it was never part of my world. But just knowing all of this medical research has been going on, and it's shown to be so beneficial to so many people. So I had my own journey of slowly decreasing my anti-seizure medications as I increased my cannabis. And I had to, it's a process of trial and error. You have to try different products, you have to try different doses until you find what works for you. So my protocol is basically a high CBD, low THC with raw cannabis. Dr. Jake was talking about the THCA, which is an anti-inflammatory, modulates the immune system, and it's also neuroprotective. So since my problem is in my brain, I love the way you described epilepsy. The nerves are all yelling at each other. So that's basically what's going on with me as well. So the THCA helps to protect my nerve cells. So I wanted to start today with a couple of videos. This is Larry, and he is an ex-chief of police in a state that does not allow cannabis. He's never used it before. He has Parkinson's disease. So somebody is coming to, give him his first dose of cannabis to see if it's going to work for him. Cannabis doesn't work for everybody. It's not like a miracle thing. But because the toxicity is so low, it really makes sense to try it to see if it will work for you. And then the second video I'm going to show, these are very short, they're only a couple minutes, is a patient on the other side of the spectrum. It's an adolescent who has autism, and she self-injures. So you will see her father come and put a mask so she inhales the cannabis, and you'll see remarkable changes. Because I think if you actually see somebody, it's undeniable. You just can't refute it. So anyway, so this is Larry.
Hi Larry, how are you? Good. How you feeling? It's kind of been a rough week, really. The best way to take it is put it under your tongue, rub it in your cheek. Don't do too much, you're gonna be asleep all week. You know what you should do? Don't try to communicate, just relax. See what happens.
We know from animal experiments that the endogenous cannabinoid system is very important in regulating motor activity, the very type of activity that is impaired in Parkinson's disease. From animal experiments, we also know that boosting certain branches of the endocannabinoid system is helpful in relieving symptoms of Parkinson's. And finally, from anecdotal information, we know that certain patients who smoke marijuana experience relief of their symptoms.
I think you're calm down. Is that amazing?
He used a single drop, and his hands afterwards were rock steady, and the dyskinesia left.
It was too bad. It works most of the time. That is. Did you guys say much? I should have really used marijuana. He's pretty angry that he can't stay.
The number one frustration that they have is knowing that there is this untapped potential that comes from what marijuana is teaching us to generate new medicines, and being stuck because of financial issues or political issues. That is extremely frustrating.
We now know that medical marijuana controls dyskinesia, and yet it's not available to us.
Okay,
this
pretty
created this
incredible,
website
huh?
links.
Pretty incredible.
Let's show you
Yeah.
it.
So the next video, obviously, is a very different situation, and it just really highlights how the same medicine, you know, because of the endocannabinoid system, can have such a positive effect in so many different situations. So this is Cara. She, as I said, is autistic. Amazing, right? We're very lucky to have cannabis here. You know, some people live in states where it's not available, it's illegal. Parents have to worry about losing custody of their children when they use cannabis. And as Dr. Jake was saying, it's not only beneficial to the patient, but to the whole family, you know, whether it's cancer or autism or Parkinson's. So anyway, now I'm going to pull up my PowerPoint. Get started on that.
That's pretty.
Okay. So any questions so far? Yes.
In the Parkinson's video, they mentioned it was a drop of something. Do you know what that was?
So that was a high concentrated cannabis oil.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is Cannabis 101. That is my email address. You can email me anytime. Born and raised here in California. Went to Mount St. Mary's Medical School, or nursing school. I've been a nurse for over 30 years, and as I mentioned, I work exclusively now with cannabis patients. So we're going to talk a little bit about the cannabinoids and more practical things, how to use it, what to use, etc. So, did that. So, just to give a little perspective, cannabis used to be the most widely prescribed drug in the United States up until the 1930s. There's a whole history as to why it became prohibited, but it had nothing to do with the quality of the medicine. It had more to do with profits and industrialization. So, and a lot of people are nervous about cannabis dependency because they have scheduled it as a Schedule I drug, which basically means that there's no medical benefit. It's highly addictive and it's not safe. Well, couldn't be further from the truth, obviously, from the medical perspective. From the dependency perspective, this is how cannabis compares. So 32% of people who try tobacco become addicted, and almost 500,000 people die every single year from tobacco. And 25% who try either prescription opioids or heroin become addicted, and last year 64,000 people died of an overdose. And you know, the thing to remember with the opioid crisis is most of the people start out with a legitimate need for pain relief. You know, they've had an accident or whatever. The problem is because it's so addictive, you know, then they get hooked on it, then their doctors start pulling back on the prescription. So then their only choice is to go out onto the black market, and heroin is cheap and it's effective. And so the layest statistic that I saw, 80% of the people who are addicted to heroin started with a prescription for opioids, and that's how they ended up there. So until we can find a solution to manage pain, you know, the opioid crisis isn't going to go away because people have legitimate pain needs. So then with cocaine, 17% become addicted, 15% of those who try alcohol. Way down at the bottom, we have 9% of people who tried cannabis become dependent, and nobody in the history of the world has ever died from a cannabis overdose. So if you just look at it in terms of risk reduction, taking somebody off of opioids, or at least reducing their dose, and using cannabis as an alternative to pain management, it's kind of a no-brainer. So, Dr. Jake already talked about some of the cannabinoids and the terpenes. The flavonoids are basically the flavor molecules. These are the most common phytocannabinoids. We talked about the THC and the CBD and the CBN, which is great for sleep. CBG is also good for interocular pressure. The problem is that it's usually in such small amounts, it's hard to find products that have a high enough level of CBG. Although I just found out from a manufacturer that they have been breeding plants to increase the CBG because it's so effective. And CBG is non-psychoactive. So anyway, there comes cannabigerol. So the THC is tetrahydrocannabinol, CBD is cannabidiol, CBN is cannabinol, CBG, they're all kind of the same thing, canna something. So CBG is good for interocular pressure, so glaucoma. Yeah, and it's like the precursor for all the other major cannabinoids. So it's usually converted by the time we get it in medicine form, so it's hard to get CBG. So anyway, and then THCV, GW Pharmaceuticals has a patent on THCV as an appetite suppressant. It modulates your blood sugar and it helps with metabolic syndrome. So that may be the next big diet solution. So we'll see. But anyway, that's why they put a patent on it.
What company was that?
That's GW Pharmaceuticals. It's out of the UK. So here's just a partial list of the different things that cannabis works for. Again, that's because the endocannabinoid system is the master neurotransmitting system, and it interacts with all the other systems in the body. So let's talk about how to use it and ways to use it, because there are a lot of different ways to ingest cannabis. And a couple of things that you want to think about are how long will it take effect, because each method has its own timing. So if you need immediate relief, if you're, let's say, going through chemotherapy, you have horrible nausea and vomiting, you can't keep anything down, tinctures and edibles aren't really gonna be where you wanna go. You wanna use the inhalation method. Again, with Dr. Jake, I don't recommend smoking, but vaping is a good alternative. And it takes about 15 seconds. So then once you have your nausea under control, then you can switch over to an edible, because the edibles don't take effect for sometimes 2 hours, but they'll last for 6 to 8 hours. So you get the nausea under control, and then you switch over to the edible, so that you have long-lasting relief. My favorite, actually, are suppositories. So suppositories allow us to give the patient a very high dose of cannabis without the psychoactivity, because that's really the issue in terms of dosing. So, because a lot of people don't like that psychoactivity. So when you use a suppository, you're able to give more milligrams, but it doesn't cause the psychoactivity that smoking or eating or anything like that. So, and for people who have difficulty, ingesting anything, suppositories are a great way to go. Topicals, I love topicals as well. And I usually use them in conjunction with tinctures. So if you have a systemic issue, if you have rheumatoid arthritis, if you have osteo, and it's a systemic issue, then if you use an ingestible form of cannabis as well as a topical on the joints that are hurting you the most, it's kind of like a 1-2 punch, and it's really quite effective. And then, so inhalation, you can either use the flower, or you can use the vape pen, or you can spend a lot of money on like the Volcano, which is a vaporizer, but you don't need to. I mean, you can buy a vape pen, but a little public service announcement on vape pens: make sure that they are not made of plastic. You want vape pens that are made out of glass and stainless steel, because it heats to a very high degree. So if it's plastic, then you're inhaling parts of plastic. So that's why you want to make sure it's glass as well as steel. And then the sublinguals, the reason why we put it under the tongue, and you just need to leave it there for about 30 seconds, is because you'll get some immediate absorption. Otherwise, it goes through the GI tract, and it takes longer for it to take effect. One of the things in terms of edibles that you need to be aware of is when THC goes through the liver, It converts from a delta 9 THC to an 11 hydroxy THC, which is much stronger than THC. So usually when you hear people say, oh my God, I had a horrible experience, it's usually because they had an edible, and since it didn't take effect right away, then they had a little more. Oh, this isn't working, give me some more. And then it goes through the liver and it's like twice as strong, and it just, you know. So you need to be careful with the edibles. I do use edibles, but I use the microdose. There are some products that are only 2.5 milligrams per serving, and I'm going to get into dosing in a minute. But
so under the tongue as opposed to on the gum?
It's the same thing,
okay.
Because there's a lot of vascular,
so it gets
questions. My dog's licked off my hand. Is that working fine?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
They're 13 it's really terrible ailments each.
Yeah.
Sheep disorder and arthritis, but they're happier, I believe, at least.
Yeah. Well, all mammals have an endocannabinoid system, so that's why cats can benefit, dogs, horses, you know, anything.
Well, at least another year.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah.
But I can't.
Yeah, and some patients, they can't do that either, so you just spray it in their mouth and, you know,
so
whatever.
For an animal that has like a cancer spot, can you put some tincture right on it too?
Yeah. Cannabis is excellent for any kind of skin issues, whether it's psoriasis, whether it's a little squamous cell or a basal cell. Yeah, there's bath bombs, actually, and they're wonderful. So if you use a bath bomb, you want to make sure the water is as hot as you can stand it. You stay in for as long as you can, and you don't shower afterwards.
Do you find when people inhale the vapors of the bath bomb that has an effect?
I haven't, well, it'd be kind of hard to distinguish which one, but, you know, it kind of would make sense. So, yeah. Yeah.
Could you, I kind of asked this before, but not very clearly. Could you go over the doses of the THC and the CBD that you would use for cancer, and what those two are doing to the cancer?
Sure.
Just a little understanding around that.
Sure. So, again, this is all based on animal studies, but they have found that THC and CBD together are better than if you use them isolated from one another, so there's a synergistic effect. Those two compounds affect cancer cells in a few different ways. One is apoptosis, which means cell suicide. So it programs the cells to die without affecting normal cells. So this is just with the cancer cells. It stops it from spreading and metastasizing. As Dr. Jake had mentioned, it stops the angiogenesis, which is basically when you have a tumor, the way the tumor is able to stay alive and grow is because it generates new blood supply to the tumor. So cannabis stops that process from happening, so it has nothing to nourish your cell.
What kind of dose do you have to put that in to?
Well, I would probably recommend a 1-to-1 THC CBD ratio, and for dosing for whatever the issue is, you want to start low and slowly increase. So every 3 or 4 days, let's say you start with 2.5 milligrams, and then you feel fine after 2 or 3 days, then you may want to go up to 5 milligrams and then see how your body feels. It really is an individual medicine.
Is it the more you can tolerate, better?
I would say that's probably the case, yeah. And you may want to consider suppositories. Okay? Yeah.
When you said psoriasis, what is it that you put on there? Do you put the CBD on there? Do you put the topical on there? What do you put?
Well, first of all, it's important to distinguish between whole plant medicine and isolates. So I always recommend using a whole plant whenever possible, because then you get a mix of all the different cannabinoids, you get the terpenes, and they all have physiological effects. And there are a ton of different topicals out there. It's worth experimenting. I happen to use a raw cannabis topical, THCA and CBDA. And basically they take the plant material and cold press it so it doesn't get heated and convert over to THC and CBD. And it's very effective. So, but they have topicals that are THC and CBD, that are THCA and CBDA. And
Is it legal to grow a plant now?
you can grow 6.
Overseas.
There are a number of places online. Oh, I think we're going to have a excellent. So I already talked about the edibles. So like I was saying, it's very easy to overconsume. So the concentrates are, I don't typically use them just because they are so powerful. But if somebody is in the end stage of an extremely painful cancer, that may be the only thing that works for them, but you certainly don't start out there. And then the topicals, and again, there's no psychoactivity when you use topical. There are some transdermal patches which have an extended relief. So that's also another good way to do it, because your skin has all of the receptors. So you just need a good carrier oil to get the cannabinoids. And the cannabinoids are actually fat soluble, so you want it with coconut oil. You want it with grapeseed oil or hemp seed oil.
Can you use your own lotion?
Yeah, sure, that's fine, as long as there's some, fat in there that will allow the molecules to. Yeah, well, if you want the raw, then you keep it below. Then you don't want to heat it. But if you are looking to create a product with THC and CBD, then it's fine to heat it. If you want a product with CBN, because CBN is, it's a byproduct of THC degradation. So if you have a bag of pot, you leave it on the windowsill for a couple of weeks and you come back, you're going to have more CBN in there than you did 2 weeks ago, because as the THC degrades because of the light and the heat, it converts to CBN. So CBN is excellent for sleep. So if you're using flour to start with and you heat it, if you heat it longer, then the THC will convert to CBN. So there's so many different ways to use the plant and the medicine that, it's wonderful.
What's a good book to learn all?
There's a book called Cannabis Revealed. It's written by Dr. Bonnie Goldstein. She's a cannabis physician down in Southern California. And that's a pretty good book. There are different books. Do you have books in your dispensary?
Not for medical focus. It's more on the genetics and history, things like that. But we're looking to get some in. So if you have some recommendations, maybe we can.
Okay.
So Bonnie Goldstein, what's the name of the book?
Cannabis Revealed.
Do you have any books?
So, as I said, I love suppositories. I know that sounds so weird, but it's true. They're wonderful. You can get 150, 125 milligrams in one suppository. You can use a THC suppository at night, sleep like a baby, and then use a CBD suppository in the morning, and you are covered. It doesn't have the psychoactivity as when you inhale it or ingest it. So dosing and lab testing. You need to be careful with the products that you choose. The regulations are now, everything needs to be lab tested, but as we know, the black market is still alive and well because of all the taxation. So if you do go outside of the regulated market, please make sure that it's been lab tested, because there are pesticides, there are molds, there's bacteria, they use solvents when they are converting it into a tincture.
There's psychos that'll lace it.
Pardon me?
There's psychos that'll lace it.
Yeah, in fact, I just found out down in Long Beach, they confiscated some cannabis flower from the black market and they analyzed it, and it had been sprayed with fentanyl. So if you don't know what fentanyl is, it's about 100 times as strong as heroin. So that's the way the cartels are maintaining their client base, basically, is getting them addicted to fentanyl. So it's really kind of gross. So dosing really is the most important factor when it comes to having a good therapeutic experience with cannabis. So, and everybody has their own dosing needs. So again, you start very low, like 2.5 milligrams, and then you slowly, after 3 or 4 days, you keep increasing it until you get to the point where you say, okay, this is good, you know. I don't have the psychoactivity that I don't want. I'm having the relief that I'm looking for. So that's when you know you have hit your therapeutic sweet spot. If you keep increasing the dose, there will come a time when it starts to go in the other direction. You may feel dysphoric, anxious, whatever. And then you know that you are taking too much and you have to back it up. So everybody has to go through that process. You know, I can't tell you exactly what dose you're going to need or what protocol. You just have to try different things, have kind of an adventurous spirit. But to me, it was well worth the effort. And that's why I'm very passionate about helping medical patients figure it out for themselves. A lot of my patients are able to get off of their pharmaceutical drugs. I have pretty much the same feeling about pharmaceutical companies as Dr. Jake. So anyway, so that's dosing. And in terms of drug interactions, it is important, if you are taking prescription meds, to know if there's any kind of drug interaction. If you go, and it all has to do with the liver. So if you ingest cannabis and you ingest a prescription medication that is broken down by the same set of enzymes, typically known as the cytochrome P450 enzymes, then since cannabis is so similar to compounds that our body makes, it prefers to break down the cannabis. And so the prescription drugs the levels in your blood will increase. So if there is an interaction, if you leave a 2-hour window between the time you take your cannabis and the time you take your prescription meds, then you can avoid that kind of an interaction. And if you want to know if there is an interaction, if you go to Medscape, it's an app, you can just load it onto your phone, or you can go to medscape.com. There's a thing that says drug interaction checker, and you just put in marijuana and whatever drugs you're on, and it will say if there's an interaction, and then you hit the interaction, and it'll tell you what it is. But it is important to know that, because there are a lot of prescription meds that are metabolized by the cytochrome P450. Yeah.
Yes. How would Ativan and the THC in that, would that interact?
Well, they're both sedative. So when you have two compounds that do the same thing, you may get more sedated than you want to. With Ativan, with opioids, with any of those very highly addictive compounds, if there's any way that you can reduce your intake of that as you increase your cannabis, you will be a lot safer.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
If someone has really bad kidneys and liver both filtered, is that the same if they have kidney problems?
You probably do need to be, maybe Dr. J can answer that a little bit better.
CBD and THC can affect that. I think of cannabis as a very good liver protector. What's going on with the cytochrome P450 has to do with drug levels being adjusted, but in terms of damage to kidneys or liver, I think of them as very protective. There are some studies on that, so feel free to email me if you're interested in renal protection, liver protection, and I just did a paper on cannabis and nerve protection that will be coming out this month as well, so you can Google that. I think of them as protectants, but that's a different thing than the cytochrome P450, which is just discussing drug levels and how, and alcohol will do a similar thing, but how one drug going through the liver is going to be different if you add another chemical. So they're slightly different. In general, very protective, and also cannabis can protect against stomach irritation from medications like NSAIDs as well. So that's a benefit.
Well, I'm thinking of somebody that had high blood pressure for so long that it bothered, that's now.
High blood pressure can be
problems.
terrible for kidneys. High blood pressure can be terrible for kidneys. So any drug that increases blood pressure, bad for kidneys, especially if there's compromise.
Potassium.
Cannabis will typically lower blood pressure. So,
Thank you.
Yeah.
Can I ask what causes like the red eye and dry mouth?
It's just vasodilation. That's one of the reasons why cannabis reduces your blood pressure, because it dilates your blood vessels. So the blood vessels in your eyes dilate, so you get red eyes. Yes, and the dry mouth. Yeah, and there are certain terpenes that also reduce salivation and can cause the dry mouth. So, and I do want to mention Coumadin, because Coumadin is a blood thinner, and it is one of the drugs that are broken down by the cytochrome P450 enzymes. So if you do decide to try cannabis, please make sure your cardiologist knows about it, and you are very compliant with getting your blood work done to make sure that your levels aren't getting too high.
Is it all blood thinners like Cannabis as well?
I believe it is. I'll have to look at that though. Okay, so again, the unwanted side effects are all dose dependent. You know, the more you take, the higher your risk of having, feeling very uncomfortable. And trust me, once you have that experience, you will never go back there. You will not want to experience that again. So that's probably the only bright side to, overconsumption. But in the event that you do overconsume, there are things that you can do to bring down your high. The first thing is you can use a CBD isolate. As Dr. Jake was saying, CBD blocks the CB1 receptors in the brain, which is where the THC, kind of the lock and key. So CBD will occupy that receptor so the THC cannot do that. And then if you chew peppercorns, peppercorns have a terpene in them called beta-caryophyllene. So beta-caryophyllene does basically the same thing. It blocks the CB1 receptors in the brain.
What if you just sniff pepper?
No, you gotta chew it. And you need the peppercorns, because you need all those terpenes. By the time it's brown, they're volatile, so they just kind of evaporate.
Peppercorns because they do what with the brain?
So peppercorns have a terpene called beta-caryophyllene. And beta-caryophyllene blocks the CB1 receptors in the brain, which is where THC attaches to.
Doesn't black pepper also slow down your liver metabolism? And that's why they say to mix it with turmeric. If you're going to make the turmeric paste, you use the black pepper so your body can absorb the turmeric because it slows down the liver.
Yeah, and you can overconsume without going through the liver. So that's why you want to make sure that you're using the peppercorns whole and not ground up. So, and then of course
Why do you not want the brain, the CBD to attach to the brain?
Well, it's the THC that causes the psychoactivity, and the THC interacts with the CB1 receptor. So if you have something blocking the CB1 receptor, such as CBD or beta-caryophyllene, the THC molecules can't go there, and
then you won't have the psychoactivity.
Exactly. Okay. So it'll help bring it down if you've got too much and you need some relief. And then there are some commercial products out there. One is called Undo, and basically it's a chemical thing that blocks the the CB1 receptors as well. And throughout the whole thing, make sure you're well hydrated, because it's very easy to get dehydrated, and if you stay well hydrated, it will help your body process and get rid of the excess. So I think that's all I had. Yes, it is. So, are there any questions? Yes.
Do you need a prescription to go to Sesame Creek Collective, for example? Okay.
Yes.
Oh, you don't want to try it.
Yes, we are still medical only, but the city of Ojai very graciously and compassionately voted 4-1 last week to allow adult use sales, so that assuming nothing happens to prevent that happening, we think it has a pretty good support. We're expected probably in the middle of August to be able to sell without a recommendation. So if you're kind of on the fence, should I get a recommendation? You know, it's another month, maybe and a half. You can use that as your judgment. Otherwise, you have cards where you can get your recommendation. But currently today, for another month and a half or so, we still need a recommendation.
Will pricing be affected?
Oh, okay. So the question was, Steve. Oh, okay. Did you hear that one? Okay. All right. I'll repeat the question so everybody can hear. Yes.
Sorry, he was asking about the pricing differences between medical and adult use. The only difference, because Ojai hasn't assessed any additional taxes, a lot of other cities and counties have. We don't have that here. Yeah. So everybody pays the same state sales tax, and everybody pays the same price for the same medicine. The main difference is adult use patients without the recommendation can buy less per day. You can only buy up to 1 ounce of flower per day. Medical patients can buy 8 ounces. And the dosage limits in things like edibles, sublinguals, I believe, are different. Medical patients can buy higher potency products.
And insurance isn't paying for anything.
Insurance doesn't pay for anything, but the cost is all the same. The only time you save money is if you're a medical patient with a recommendation and you go through the additional step of getting a card from the county health department. That will save you 7.25% sales tax. And if you spend more than $250 a month on cannabis, it's worth it for you to get that card. That's the only price difference. We have senior discounts and veteran discounts.
Excellent. Okay, any more questions? Yes.
So I was wondering, how when you buy something, can you tell that it has been appropriately lab tested? So, you know, like Upland Park, I find that all the way up down the coast of California. It's probably okay.
Yeah.
But I have no way.
So if you look on the packaging, you'll see a sticker, and it will have the lab's name on it, like SC Labs, and it will break down the cannabinoids. You may not see the terpene results. If you go onto a product's website, for example, if you go to W-Vapes, they have all of their lab results for each product, and you just have to hit the button that says lab results, and you can see all the terpenes, all the solvents, the pesticides, as well as the potency.
So yeah, I'll just add that if you are at a licensed dispensary, assuming they have a license, they're not black market, any product in there has to be lead tested according to state regulation. That's one of the major reasons why regulation is important.
So probably if you buy it from your neighbor, it's not.
If you buy it from your neighbor, unless your neighbor bought it from us and they're just passing it along, then that's one thing. But if it's like, yeah, if it's in an unlabeled jar, then you might not want to trust it. But yeah.
Exactly.
I am trying to help my 80-year-old, very eccentric cousin in Heritage Beach with irritable bowel syndrome. So she does not know that CBD has anything to do with marijuana.
Okay.
So I had her pick up some CBD from Mother's at the store. And she said, I'm starting low. She doesn't know what it is. So she got 15 milligrams. So I don't know what it is. Are they all the same? So I was going to have her take it in the evening, so just in case there were any effects for IBS. And I'm just like hopeful, but I was so glad about this today. I thought maybe I'd learn something. So now I see if she did take it in the evening and it were to help, it only lasts 6 to 8 hours. So would she notice that it might help? Because I was afraid. I've taken CBD a couple times for a couple things, and I can notice, like, it's not THC, but I notice something. So I'm afraid she might notice something and panic.
Well, you will feel effects of CBD. So there are a couple of questions in there. Let me address the products. So not all products are the same. There's a lot of crap out there. You know, people see this, oh, the green rush, I'm gonna make $1 gazillion, and they put products out on the market. They've been tested and some of them have no CBD in them whatsoever. They'll say hemp seed oil, and people don't understand that the hemp seeds have no cannabinoids in them. So you just, again, it goes back to looking at the lab results. So if you're using a product that has lab results, you can see exactly the potency of it and that it's clean. So I would recommend that she go to that product's website, because if they lab test, they want everybody to know that they lab test, because it's like a sign of being legitimate.
I did do that and it looks legit. It looks
Oh,
like a
great.
good product.
Okay, all right, so now that we know it's a good product. CBD, if you think of THC effects from the neck up and CBD effects from the neck down. CBD is a muscle relaxant, it's an anti-anxiety. It reduces seizures, it does all these wonderful kind of relaxation actions. So she may feel that, which is good, because when you have irritable bowel, that's a good thing to have happening. And again, it's dose dependent, so she starts low, and until she gets to the point where she says, you know, this isn't making me feel so good, then you back it up, or she may get to a dose where she says, okay, this is working great, I don't need to take any more, because let's face it, cannabis is expensive. And so you don't want to take more than you need to take because you're not getting any additional benefit. So
15 milligrams a little high?
well, it depends.
For an 80-year-old, 115 pounds.
You know, that's one of the interesting things about cannabis. Usually when they prescribe prescription medications, it's based on the patient's weight. They'll say take a certain number of milligrams per kilogram of weight. With cannabis, it's pretty much the opposite. So little kids, because their metabolism is so fast, they need a higher dose than an 80-year-old, because the 80-year-old's metabolism is much slower. So again, it just depends on the person's tolerance. When I start, I usually start with around 2.5 milligrams, 5 milligrams depending on the person and the issue and how severe the symptoms are and how quickly they want some relief. 15 milligrams is still a very low dose. People take thousands of milligrams a day. So, but again, why take 1,000 when 100 will?
Is a milligram equal to a drop?
Pardon me?
Is a milligram equal to a drop?
No, if you look on the packaging, it will usually say what the serving size is and how many milligrams are in the serving size. And a lot of times it will say like 0.6 milliliters, and if you get a 1 milliliter syringe, if you get a 1 milliliter syringe, then you can accurately dose it. So, and they will sometimes have a formula for, if it's a spray bottle, it'll say how many milligrams per spray, and it could be as little as 0.6 milligrams per spray to as much as 2.5 milligrams per spray, depending on the product. So you just have to make sure that you do the math. Yeah.
So I heard just like essential oils and great and need like a warm room. Can a THC CBD tincture left in a warm Ojai house become psychoactive?
Well, THC is already psychoactive, but if you do use the raw, which is the THCA, and I do use that with a lot of my patients because I have a lot of autoimmune patients. So you want to make sure that you don't put that bottle of THCA in your hot car, next to your oven, in the bright sunlight, because the THC will convert to THC. I mean, the THCA will convert to THC.
Okay.
And you've gone from a non-psychoactive to a very psychoactive compound.
So all of this then helps inflammation, helps seizures, and helps many, many different things. So in helping all of that, are we curing anything? Do you continue to take it until you go, geez, I don't know if I have to take it anymore. So, do you speak to that?
Sure. Sure. So, and that's a very good question, because pharmaceuticals, they just mask the symptoms, they relieve the symptoms, there is no curative. With cannabis, since we don't have human research trials, we can't say, oh, well, it will definitely do that. We have animal studies, and based on the animal studies, it does affect the body's actual functioning. So let's say you have an autoimmune disease, and your immune system is just going haywire, and it's attacking all of your normal cells and thinking that they're foreign and trying to kill them. If you take in cannabinoids, which work with the endocannabinoid system to maintain homeostasis, it will actually slow down your immune system so that it's not firing like gangbusters and causing pain and disease. So in that sense, we do know that it doesn't just mask the symptoms, it actually is an immune system modulator, so it does affect the functioning. So, for example, with my condition, it's genetic. There's nothing cannabis can do in terms of changing that, my genes, but it does work on the outward symptoms, and it helps me manage it that way without, you know, the anti-seizure medications. So it depends on what the issue is that you're trying to work with, and you know, if it's the type of thing that can be modulated, like the immune system. Does that answer?
Yes.
Okay.
If I could make a recommendation, if anyone has contact with the companies who produce the packaging, you're now looking at going to the baby boomers. So black on a dark field, black writing on a dark field is not our forte. And if we want to learn about that stuff, we can have packaging that is more sensitive to cataracts and eyesight.
I think this is
vision
a great
problems.
point. We've all been struggling because they put in really intense child-resistant packaging restrictions. And so all of our seniors are having trouble. And it's just like a disaster. I wish I could have rewritten that one myself. I think it's going to take some petitioning to the Bureau of Cannabis Control. And maybe one of the things I can do to facilitate that is to create a petition and send it around and you guys can all sign it.
But if you can talk to the packaging people of your companies.
Yeah, the packaging people. There's 3 people out there you can talk to.
Let me have at them.
I hear you. I'm compassionate to that issue.
Okay, well, one more question.
Okay, can you talk about whether or not there's building of tolerance? Because one of the things I worry about most when I see something for pain, you can build a tolerance to that.
Right, and that's a good question. With opioids, you do build a tolerance, which is what gets people in trouble, because they start taking too much and it's still not managing their pain, and you know, the receptors for opioids are in your brain stem, which regulate your respirations and your heart rate. So that's why people die from it. There are no cannabis receptors in your brain stem, so you never need to worry about overdosing and having a fatal overdose. So in terms of building tolerance with cannabis, if you are a heavy everyday user, you will build a tolerance to it. If you abstain from ingesting cannabis for 48 hours, it will reset that tolerance, and you will start again at a low dose and start building up until you find, so. Okay, well, thank you, everybody.